Hey everyone, welcome back. If you've ever scrolled through listings on a site like realtor.ca and felt that gut punch like, yeah, that condo looks amazing, but there's no way I'll ever be able to afford it in my lifetime, stick around. I'm your host, Ian, and today we're diving deeper into the economic shift through the generations in Canada. We're going to be talking about why millennials and Gen Z are staring down the endless tunnel of dread when it comes to owning a home, drowning in debt that feels like it'll never end, and even starting families. And we're going to tackle this debate head on. Is it really the younger generation's fault, their spending habits, their attitudes, or the cold hard facts point to bigger systemic forces? We'll unpack data from both sides, both points of view, trace the turning point, and figure out who's hitting the wall hardest and who might be dodging it a bit better. Let's get into it. Back in the 1970s and 80s, your average boomer couple could snag a starter home in Toronto for about $80,000. That's roughly 3 times their annual household income. Fast forward to today, September 2025, and the national average home price is hovering around $700,000, or about 9 times the median household income. Since 1981, real estate prices have skyrocketed 164% after adjusting for inflation, while full-time wages have only crept up about 24% in the same stretch. Boomers and early Gen Xers rode a wave where housing was an investment that paid off big. Many paid off their mortgages by their 50s and watched values double or triple. But for millennials, born roughly 1981 to 1996, and Gen Z 1997 to 2012, it's a different story. Home ownership rates tell the tale there. 81% of boomers own, 74% of Gen X, but only 61% of millennials, and a stark 21% of Gen Z, although there are a lot more younger people that may not be of age yet. And get this, in hot markets like Toronto and Vancouver, young buyers are facing down payments that average $150,000 or more, often requiring family help, something not every family can provide. Now, before we dive into debt and job numbers, let's pause and address the big blame game that's been raging for years. And we've all heard this, so I'm just gonna bring it out there. Older generations pointing fingers at millennials and Gen Z saying, if you just skip the avocado toast and the lattes from Starbucks, you could afford a house like we did. So is this dread real, or are younger Canadians just bad with money? Let's debate it fairly really quick, taking views from both sides. First, taking a look at the older generation side. Think boomers and some of the older Gen Xers. From their viewpoint, every generation had struggles. But millennials and Gen Z are making it worse with poor choices. They argue that young people today are entitled, spending on luxuries instead of sacrificing like they did. Back in the day, boomers faced high interest rates, up to 18% in the early 80s. On top of that, they had to deal with double-digit inflation. But they buckled down, lived frugally, and made it work. Today, critics say millennials and Gen Z are blowing cash on Uber Eats, streaming services, and pricey brunches. We all know that one boomer that points out, we didn't have smartphones or subscriptions. We saved every penny for that down payment. And the data seems to show that they aren't wrong. Holiday spending for Gen Z is up 55% from 2023, and millennials 51%, while boomers are more restrained at 20%. In a 2025 FP Canada survey, 42% of Canadians cite money as top stress. The older folks argue young people aren't prioritizing debt reduction enough. Only 38% of millennials see it as a key goal versus boomers who are more conservative with their habits. But they point to gig economy choices too. Why chase unstable freelance work instead of a steady 9 to 5 like we did? And family planning? Well, boomers say delaying kids is a choice, not a necessity. Back then, they started families young despite economic hurdles. The narrative boils down to this: toughen up, cut the extras, and stop blaming the system. But let's hold on here a minute. Let's flip to the younger generation's defense, because the numbers paint a very different picture in a lot of ways. Millennials and Gen Z counter that the avocado toast myth is exactly that, a myth. Skipping daily $5 lattes might save you $1,800 a year, but with the average home price needing a $140,000 down payment in major cities, it'd take 77 years of no coffee to cover it. Ridiculous when wages haven't kept pace. In reality, Gen Z is saving more than any generation. 11% of each paycheck on average, and 70% have boosted emergency funds recently amid trade war fears. A BNN Bloomberg report highlights this. Younger workers are in survival mode, worrying less about finances because they're adapting harder. But the deck is stacked. Governments failed to plan for population booms, leading to housing shortages that favor older owners. Millennials entered the workforce post 2008 recession, facing a lost decade of stagnant wages, while boomers benefited from post war growth and policies that built affordable suburbs. And spending? It's not luxuries, it's necessities a lot of the time. Rent eats 40 to 50% of income. Student debt averages $28,000. And over half of young Canadians are stressed about money due to housing alone. Gen Squeeze argues young people are compensating for older generations and their shortfalls by paying higher taxes and enduring the deficits. On jobs, it's not choice. Automation and offshoring killed manufacturing roles that the boomers had, leaving precarious gigs. And families? Financial strain is forcing delays. BMO says rising costs are reshaping parenting decisions for 60% of millennials and Gen Z. As one Globe and Mail piece notes, millennials and Gen Z deserve protections because past policies eroded the integrational contract. The defense? It's not habits. It's a broken system where young Canadians feel betrayed, with 1 in 3 considering leaving the country. So, now the big question is, who's right? The data leans toward systemic issues over personal failings. Wage growth at 24% versus housing at 164% isn't fixed by skipping brunch. But there's truth on both sides. Every generation has to adapt to their situation, and young folks could trim where possible. Moving on to the debt numbers, because that's a shadow lurking, Canada's total consumer debt just cracked $2.5 trillion in 2025. And millennials now hold the largest share, overtaking boomers for the first time. Millennials and Gen Z carry about 45% of it, despite earning less. Non-mortgage debt for under 36ers averaged $14,300, up 2%, and Gen Z's credit card balance jumped 30% year over year. 72% of millennials and 61% of Gen Z have credit card debt, higher than older generation. But as we debated, it's not all reckless. Equifax reports young people are falling behind on bills more because of cost, not choices. Layer on the job market, youth unemployment at 14.2% this summer, the worst in decades. Employment rates tanked to 1998 levels. Part-time work for 20 to 24-year-olds jumped from 10% in 1979 to 35% now. Real wages stagnant since the 2000s, and with boomers retiring en masse by 2030, labor participation drops, but immigration floods supply without enough good jobs. Now, this isn't all hopeless. Like we said, every generation has to find a solution and they have to make it work. What do you think about all this? Is it system or is it habits? Is home ownership still the dream, or do we need to make a shift on what we expect? Let me know what you think in the comments. I'll see you on the next one.